This is today's business leaders. Actionable advice from real-world professionals. And now here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
Awesome. So today I'm very excited. I have Kyle Lipton on the show, and we are going to talk about entrepreneurship and mindset and life and what it's like to be an absolutely amazing millennial entrepreneur like Kyle is. So welcome to the show, Kyle.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I know. We've been hanging out on Facebook for a little while. I don't know how long. 6 months maybe.
Yeah.
For a year.
We scheduled it a while back, so I was like, I'm excited for this one. This one's like out in the future.
Very cool. So tell me, when did you first realize that you were an entrepreneur?
Man, that is such a good question. Super early on. I started straight out of high school being a club promoter. And I'd be on, I don't know if anyone's been to Hollywood, but I would be on Hollywood Boulevard passing out these like little tickets to get into the club. And they'd get like $5 off. And I remember I would do this. And it was one of those experiences where it's super entrepreneurial, because basically all I'm doing is, hey, come to the club. Like, this is going to be amazing. And I do that all the time. And I basically worked for myself in a sense, because it was like I was a self-generator. I'd get paid under the table. They'd give me an envelope of cash, and I would just, you know, you what is the phrase? You eat what you kill.
Yep.
And I've worked jobs, but they've all been like very, you know, I've worked for other people in the personal development space, and just like weird, like only jobs that someone with an entrepreneurial spirit would do, you know? Like I remember I had a week of doing credit card processing machine sales. It was terrible. It was a week. I worked with this guy.
Rough job, dude.
Especially as like an 18-year-old kid who, like, you know, I worked with a guy named Ran-D. Like, it was ridiculous. It's one of those things for me where I don't have another option. You know, like, I'd rather be homeless. I'd rather it's never a long-term strategy for me. Like, I just can't. I don't know any other way to put it.
Yeah. I've said that before. I'd rather be homeless than work for somebody else. I don't feel that way anymore because I have a family, but yeah. I know the sentiment, and I have done that before having a family. I was like, fuck this, I'm out. I'd rather be alone living in my car than miserable in this place.
100%.
Yeah, that's cool. And that's a pretty, that's similar to every successful entrepreneur that I ever meet. They're out hustling face to face with something.
Yeah.
Were you good at it when you were handing out the club tickets and stuff? Like, did it last for a while, or?
I did. Everyone besides myself and this other guy named Hector got booted off the team. And I mean, there was motivation in it for me too, because I'm like, there's girls. You know, at the time I'm 18.
Yeah.
There's money where I'm getting an envelope of cash, and there's just the rush. Like, I'm a very extroverted person, so connecting with people and like getting people to the outcome is super exciting for me. Like, taking them to the promised land of like booze and decent music.
And some women.
Yeah, it was an experience for sure. It taught me a lot, you know. It teaches you a lot about certainty, conviction, like really enrolling someone in a vision, because these people were just walking around kind of derping around sometimes, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it's like, well, imagine this, you know. So it's very transformative, as funny as it sounds.
Yeah, no, I love it. I did outside sales for 10 years, maybe longer, in different companies, different products, different things. And most people's hangups with picking up the phone to make the call, or walking out and knocking on the door, or showing up live for the appointment, most of your hangups are just in your head. That's nothing like what you thought will ever happen, ever. Yep. It's mostly you're just afraid, and you don't have true belief and conviction, which is very interesting, you know, that you say that. That's actually one of the things that we talk a lot about in my sales trainings is you've got to have belief. You can't do it just on knowledge. You can't do it, you know, just on enthusiasm. It actually has to be belief if you're going to move people forward, you know, into your thing.
Yeah. And you have to, if you're working with something that you don't believe in, that's going to be super short lived.
Yeah.
You can only manipulate your own mind until you just get exhausted because it's just not in alignment.
Yeah, no kidding. So you start out getting people into the club, and you realize you're an entrepreneur somewhere along the way there. Give us the short history of from there to today, what you've learned, what the journey's been like.
Yeah. So for me, the journey's been that mixed with like a whole bunch of personal development. I mean, I've been from so many different workshops and like experiences, from like Tony Robbins to Tantra to like just like a whole bunch of stuff. And I've learned a lot. I've connected with a lot of awesome people. But throughout the journey, man, it's been from when I was 18, I was going to college at the time. It was community college, and I was taking some business classes, but I was kind of like, I don't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was super clear. And then I got a job opportunity to work for this guy named Ty Lopez when I was 18. And he was someone at the time where I like looked up to, and he was like an online mentor to me. And I ended up going to his conference in February of 2015 and connected with his cousin and his half brother. And then it was crazy, man. It was a really surreal experience because I grew up so much in like lower class, and I hadn't seen some of these things. And
yeah,
I went from she told me to send her an email when I was at the conference. So I did. And then she reached back out to me like a week later or something. And it was amazing. She's like, do you want to come to the house? And I'm like in school at the time. And I think I might've ditched my classes to go there that day.
Nice.
And then they put me on a trial to see if I was a good fit. And so I think I ditched all my classes, if not all, most of them that week to go do it. And then they onboarded me, and I was like, all right, cool. I'm quitting this whole school thing.
Yeah.
Parents had a bit of a hang up about that, but my conviction was there and my trust was there.
Right.
And that set me off for about another year of working there and learning about business and entrepreneurship. And I think more than anything, like seeing what's possible. I think one thing that's so huge is getting around a new environment and kind of setting a new baseline for what's real.
Yeah.
So that was a big piece. And then I quit there. Here's kind of the entrepreneurial bug. I was like, I don't know what my end game is here. I don't know. I don't want to be the CEO here. I don't want to like move up in the company here. I don't know what to do. So what happened was I quit to start this podcast series, this interview series. And then that led me to, I interviewed some really cool people, but I never actually ended up launching it. But I went to this event called Man Talks in Santa Monica. Mm-hmm. And really cool people like Joel Brown and Preston Smiles and just some other people. And I saw Preston there, and I was like, I wanted to interview him for my series. And I was like, I'd love to go out to lunch with you and interview. He's like, yeah, for sure, man. Just send me an email. And I did. And what can happen with, emailing these people? No response. But destiny had something for me, because I ran into him and his wife, Alexi, again at a cafe. And I was like, I used to work for Ty. I'd love to help you guys for free. And then they're both like, shoot me an email. And I did. No, I actually didn't. I don't know why. I don't know what the reasoning was. Trips me out a little bit. So then I was in a relationship at the time where I was in the zone where I'm like, do I leave this relationship? And I had watched like a plethora of Tony Robbins relationship videos trying to reframe my perspective. And I'm like, all right, we're just going to do this. But I noticed every conversation I was having was like, so, hey, what do you think about this situation I'm in right now? And then I saw Preston on his website had a coaching, hour-and-a-half coaching session. It was $711. Mm-hmm. And it was on his website. And I was like thinking about pulling the trigger, and I did. And then, everything unfolded perfectly, because I went up, he offered me a paid job, and then I became his right-hand man and assistant for like a year and a half, just doing freaking everything. And it was life-changing, man. And it was one of those things where it's like, if I didn't make the decision to do that, I could be on a totally different trajectory. And like what can happen even unexpectedly from investing in yourself and following the inspiration and synchronicities. Cause it's like, on one hand, oh yeah, you lost $711. Like that's it's a ridiculous thing about some of these things. We question our inspiration. It's like, well, look what happened to my life. If I didn't pay that, like my whole life's different. And then from there, stumbled upon coaching. And I've always kind of, not always, but quite a bit done it informally, just like supporting people. I can offer advice. And then there was a moment where I coached people on this hot seat experience for like 3 hours. And I had just this beautiful experience of emptiness after, where I felt like, yep, this is 100% for me and part of my calling. And that was a moment for me through the ups and downs of the coaching where it just locked in so solid. And I just knew that was one of my gifts.
You said something really interesting. You said you had a moment of emptiness and then you tied that into being something really powerful and positive. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, that's a good distinction. So when I say emptiness, I say more the feeling of like, I gave everything that was in my tank.
Okay.
And it was just like, whatever was inside of me that wanted to express is out.
Cool. Because part of my personal development journey has been emptying, which is a different explanation, but you probably could speak to too, is part of my personal development journey has been stripping away everything until there's absolutely nothing left and rebuilding with what I want. So that it kind of made me think of that too. So is that what you do now, is coaching all the time? Is that kind of the main focus?
That's one of the main focuses. I mean, along with like creating content and, I'm really excited more about using my own unique gifts of like comedy and like just some of these other untapped things that excite me to use. And I know coaching is part of my gift. And I also know there's a lot more that wants to express. And I'm excited to just keep moving in the direction that scares me and also challenges me to just play a bigger game and to show more of who I really am to the world.
I remembered how we connected. It was making fun of coaching.
Yeah,
and it was
or something.
You were like interviewing yourself. It was brilliant, dude.
Oh, thanks, man.
It was I can't remember what the topic was, but I was like, holy shit, that's so fucking funny. I'm gonna follow this guy. I don't care what he's about. And that was the beginning of realizing who you really are. But it was something you were like,
calls, right? Like we're going on a discovery call with a life coach.
Yeah, and it was like you were like making fun of how in the next 20 minutes I'm gonna make you give me your life savings, even if you can't afford it. It was something like that. I was like, holy shit, this is what the coaching industry needs. Somebody to poke fun at them and tell them to quit fucking up.
Yeah. And see, that was like I got like a gentle nudge from my soul essentially to do that. Like one of my mentors was like, you should do something like that. I dare you.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like now that opened up the opportunity for us to connect. So I think one thing is like when you follow that inspiration, you don't know what will come of it. Like now we have a relationship based on like some freaking 4-minute video that I did.
Video that cracked me up. Yeah, no, there's a lot of truth to that. And that's something that I've like hyper focused in a lot more on this year, is like really starting to pay attention to my intuition at a different level, because anytime I follow my intuition, I get gold. Anytime I try to like methodically plan and over engineer and everything like that, the results are low, if existent. And I think I've had a few conversations around this over this year so far, but I think some of that comes from out of our subconscious, or a lot of it, or our soul, or our heart, or whatever you want to label it as.
Word.
Yeah. And then some of it comes from like the energy of all, humanity, like this world community that we're living in. And some of it is from other people. And like, if you're responding, you're probably hearing a call in your own heart and a call from somebody else. Is the way I think.
But what do you mean by that exactly? Like, do you have like I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like a call from myself and a call from other people. Do you have like a example?
I just have a theory on it. But I think that we are all like bees in a hive, and they all communicate like through energy and through bumping into each other. But our bee spirit is at the spiritual level, like at the universal God spiritual level. And that's where our energy projects up. And you can get shock waves of information through that energy. And I know this is true, but it won't be proven for a while because it's a little hard to measure. But I know it's true because I can sense when there's like waves of change in an industry before they fully happen. I can feel where that's coming from. That's really apparent. Just like you'll recognize this one. There's a certain point at night on the internet when all the waves of the internet have calmed down and it's glassy and smooth. Do you know what time that is?
3 a.m.
Yep.
Well, I just guessed that. I actually had no clue.
No, it is. It's like 2 or 3 a.m. That's when all peace and calm comes to the digital waves.
Wow.
And like you just knew that. You have the right answer. You knew it. That's like a real macro level of how this system works, in my opinion. I think this is spirituality and God and the universe and all things good. There's that macro level that we can feel energies and waves at a big level. However, when that little inspiration comes to you, especially when it relates to somebody else, they put out a little beacon and you just happen to be on the right plane or close enough to hear it.
Yeah, I think it was funny because you had the theory and then you asked me a question and then I like proved your theory.
Yeah. So it's just a theory only because I can't measure that and prove that to you, but I absolutely believe it to be true. And I've proven it over and over in my own life. So at least it's true for me, and it's okay if it's not true for other people.
Yeah.
But anytime I've reached out, like you described what I've done too, like you reach out or you connect or you do something, and like that happened perfectly because there was a need there and they needed you. Like that didn't happen accidentally, I don't think. Because otherwise, the reason I know it's like designed at some level or something going on is because otherwise you could make 100 phone calls to all the top influencers and not a single one would call you back.
100%.
So that's way down the rabbit trail or the rabbit hole. But that's I don't know how we started there, but that's how I think about those things.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, it's like following your intuition. You have choices, right? You can be in the ocean and you could be like, all right, like the waves are coming at you and you're like, and then the big wave comes and then it hits you and you're like, all right, I guess I'll float now. I guess I'll float. And it's like, that's the calling 100 influencers and pitching them when your heart, don't do that yet. It's not a good idea, but your mind's like, but I need money. I really need money.
Right.
And then, let's say you wait 2 days and it's like, oh, you should do it now. That's when when the wave comes, you just float back and you just go with it. And then everything just goes a lot smoother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't have that all figured out, but I'm playing there a lot and it's fun. So I try to float as much as possible. So I still crash into the waves all the time, but I try to float whenever possible.
I've definitely had some crashes.
But that's my take on, as a short take on intuition. But so now that you're coaching and exploring other things too, I have one unsolicited comment for you. I think the comedy thing is a bigger piece than you realize.
Thanks for saying that.
I think that's actually your angle, because you and I both know that there's a perception. It may be a perception or it may be truth, but there's at least a perception that 80-90% of coaches are full of shit.
I think that I think there's a lot of coaches that maybe bat above, not above their average or whatever it's called, like
they're playing at too high a league or level or something.
They're trying to help someone that they might not feel that they can truly help.
Yeah.
And for me, that's out of integrity.
Yeah. And you're not authentically being you if you're trying to solve something you have no idea that you're even talking about, or like, I don't know. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And if you're coaching for just money, that's something to look at.
Yeah.
Right. Because even like on a deep level, if we want to like go down a rabbit hole, it's like, if I'm coaching for money, that means that I'm fundamentally lacking a trust in my intuition and my inspiration. So everything that I'm doing outside of, like when I'm doing coaching, I'm essentially saying, I'm not safe to be who I am. I'm not supported to be who I am. I'm not able to trust who I am. Mm-hmm. And then perpetuating that, it's like, one of my mentors said something good to me this morning. He was like, what we do most, we do best. And it's like, okay, you keep practicing that. You're making it a habit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just something to take note of. And I think if you're going to do something like that, do it with compassion and do it with humility. Like, be honest that you're doing that for those reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool. But don't delude yourself and be like, well, I love it. And then you just like have adrenal fatigue at the end of every single day, like hating life, you know?
Yeah, because that causes such a level of dissonance that your students or clients or whatever you want to call them will pick up on it, and you're actually hurting them, I think.
Right. It's like being out on a date with someone and they're like halfway wanting to be somewhere else. It's like, just leave. I don't want to be here.
Exactly.
Like, I don't want half of your presence. I don't want, if this is an obligation for you, like, please go. I'll enjoy myself somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think there's a big piece there, because my belief about comedy is that it's probably some of the most insightful information that we have the ability to absorb on a daily basis. Good comedy.
Yeah.
Like well thought out, well written, like well executed comedy, which is an art form in itself. So I don't understand it completely, but I think people that can pull off comedy are really intelligent. And if you can start the conversation by saying, in a sense, start the connection like we did by saying, oh, that's bullshit and we don't do it that way here, then I think you'll have an opportunity to serve more people.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I think comedy is a really great gateway into getting people receptive to information.
Yeah.
Well,
chemically it works well.
Yeah, totally. Even on a chemical level.
Yeah. No, for sure. So what kind of things, as you've moved into coaching and you want to serve and help people there, the only reason you're on the show is because you authentically help people and you put out incredible value. And I know that you are authentically you through and through, and you just put incredible value out into the universe. I don't take my audience's time or focus lightly, and I don't mess around with people that I think are fake. And I can usually tell relatively fast when people are fake. I've been hosed by the best, but I can usually tell. Yeah. So with that being said, I take a lot of stock in what your answers and what you share and things you've sent me personally and things you post publicly. What do you think, who are the people that you help the most, and how do you help them?
Yeah, I think too, one thing I just want to make super clear is I'd say I'm on a journey of more and more authenticity. Like, my intention is authenticity. Mm-hmm. And it's an ever unfolding journey of becoming more and more of who I am. Because if I were to look at my Facebook videos a year ago, I'd be like, Right. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear, but
yeah, mine too.
Right. So I'd say the people that I help the most, there's two answers to that. So one is people who are really ready to take a leap into more of their own power, more of their own personal freedom, and more of their own clarity, right? So I think clarity enables confidence, and confidence supports your freedom. And to be able to really, the only thing that inhibits clarity, which would lead to the confidence, which would lead to personal freedom, of course, if you took the action on it, mm-hmm. is not knowing how to navigate our emotional trauma, right? Because a baby doesn't cry and it's like, yo, is Steve over there in the other crib looking at me right now? Like, I don't know. The baby's just like, I'm crying. And then people come help the baby most of the time, unless, they don't. And then that's what causes emotional trauma as an adult. Then you're here at all the work. Anyway. So I hope people really navigate through their trauma and actually connect with really what they want. And I think what that takes is, it takes presence. It takes the ability to feel someone, like what's true for them. And I don't want to let up on someone. I remember I had a call with someone. It was like 2 hours, dude. And I just had such an inspiration to support them. And one of the things was like, let's just be really honest. And first money reasons came up, first like all these other reasons came up. And then we finally got to the root of it. And it's like, all right, so the real reason is I'm just afraid, right? Confusion is a manifestation of fear, right? So if we're saying, I don't know, sometimes genuinely, if they're like, how many stars are in the solar, it's like, I don't know.
Right.
But if you're like, so what do you want to do today? And then you sort of, the autopilot response for a lot of people is, I don't know. Right. But they actually took a moment to get present. Oh, really what I want to do is I want to go out to the beach,
Mm-hmm.
or I want to go on Facebook Live, and I'm scared of that. And that's what I help people to really slow down and tune into who they are. Because I mean, from that space, from connecting to who you are and really what you're meant to do in this world, everything changes. Your relationship changes, your purpose changes, your business could change. I think all of these things change as a byproduct of you shifting, you know? And it takes exquisite honesty, courage, bravery, vulnerability. And for me, it's kind of like the entrepreneurship thing. It's like where I can't go anywhere else. Like I'm not gonna, the only time I would consciously choose to maybe slow down, or like, let's say even emotional eating. Like I might not be super hard on myself. Maybe I'd be like, you know what, I'll give myself permission,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm afraid to go into the emotion, which is a lot different than like, yo, I just really love chips, like 4th bag today. It's amazing. And so I help people really take leaps, and also to show them and to support them, like it's safe to do so. Like I have a client who has a massage therapy business, and I think one of the pivotal moments, I mean, maybe she'd have a different opinion, but we were on a call one day and I was like, so what would you do if you were fearless? And she's like, oh, I just talk to more people. I'm like, awesome. So go do that. And she talks to more people, and then lo and behold, she's like, oh my gosh, like everything's changing. Like my business clients are coming in, and it's like, you just moved into where your fear was, because whatever you're afraid of holds your power. And if you're afraid to go into something, if you're afraid to speak your truth, that's holding your power. And underneath that is if we want to receive everything that's meant for us, we have to be everything that is true to us. Right. So when we withhold, we're actually missing out on the fruits of our labor in a sense. And for me, I have an unquenchable hunger and thirst to know what's there, which terrifies me sometimes. So that, and then also just people, you know, if I get an intuitive ping to coach someone, then I'll follow that too, because there's some sort of synchronicity waiting if I feel the intuition.
Mm-hmm. Very deep, man. I like it.
Oh, thanks.
No, I think what you said is really interesting. Like just helping people navigate their emotions. That's huge. Like I don't think that growing up, I didn't have those conversations. Like nobody told me that I could manage and deal with effectively and proactively my own emotions. And I don't know why that's not part of like childhood, but it sure would be nice.
The thing is too, like that's everything. And I think when we try and create a legacy or live our mission from a place of avoiding our emotional trauma, we're essentially saying that we're essentially not living our mission to its fullest capacity if we avoid that for our whole life.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're going to try and out strategize your heart, you're done. In a sense of you'll never be able to really see what's possible for your life. And everything boils down to emotions, because you can't have clarity if you're clouded emotionally. You can't have clarity if you're afraid of yourself. You can't trust someone in a relationship if you can't trust yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's important to address those things and to clear the charges. Right. So it's like, for example, if you're so afraid of not succeeding, you're creating success from a place of resistance. Right. Which could be awesome fuel. You know, it could get you super far, but eventually you're operating more from motivation than inspiration. And inspiration, it's like you break that word down. It's like in spirit. Right. And in spirit, there's no, your spirit isn't like, yo, I'm really afraid this is going to happen. No, your spirit's just like, this is the direction to go. It's going to be amazing. Follow it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's just important to take inventory of like what you're afraid of, why are you afraid of it? And just get curious and to really dig down into like, what's the worst that could happen? And then from that place, are you willing to risk that fear? And sometimes our egos come up with stuff that's not even true. Like, yo, my whole Facebook following is going to unfollow me the same day if I post this. It's like, really? It's like the weirdest shit that our ego will come up with. Like, I'm going to die from anxiety right now if I like sit with this emotion. It's like, you won't.
Right.
And, you know, if we treated our emotions more like a child, I think everything would be different, because that's really what it is, right? The wounded parts of ourselves, the sadness, the anger, the depression, it's really our own inner child that didn't get the love that it needed. And now it wants that. So like, imagine a kid coming up to you who's crying and you're like, yo, go scroll Facebook, you know, or like, here, just eat a bag of chips, or just go watch porn, right? Like all of these things, we're literally doing these to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, you know, most people I would imagine would be like, oh, everything's okay.
Why are you crying? Like, actually, right?
Right. Exactly. Inquiring and just being present.
Yeah.
And so many of us, we're afraid to be present because it's uncomfortable with ourselves. So we do things like we disassociate, and we, you know, we go to drugs, we go to alcohol because we're afraid to feel what's here. But the beautiful thing is we have an opportunity to just slow down and get present with ourselves and give ourselves the love that child inside of us really craves and wants and desires. And from a place of meeting our own needs in that sense, we won't seek so much outside of ourselves to get those needs met through coping mechanisms like drugs, like alcohol, like porn, like all these things. And it's funny too, because I feel like a lot of people are afraid to do that.
I would agree. How do you get over that then?
Well, I think a few things. I mean, there's so many different ways you could. I think a lot of it could just be intuitive if I work with someone. But one is like realizing you're afraid of your clarity, right? Because with clarity, you might feel a sense of responsibility. Because it's one thing to be like, oh, I don't know. And you do that for 5 years and you're like just coasting on coping mechanisms versus like, oh shit, I do know what to do.
How you gotta do it.
That's harder to live with.
It's for
harder
sure.
to live with knowing what to do and not doing it.
I like that. When you're like navigating emotional trauma, or, you know, at whatever level trauma is for you, like we realize that could be different. Like something silly and stupid could affect some, or I won't call it not silly and stupid, something that appears minuscule is what I actually mean. Could like, you're like, why can't you get over that? Or even you could even judge yourself that way, which is not what you should do.
Right.
Or it could be something like that would seem very horrific to other people. Again, just all our perspective. And that's easier to solve when you have that, you've uncovered that thing. We've talked a little bit about this offline, you know, for me, like when you realize that thing that you have to navigate and solve, do you believe that you'll get to the point where it will ultimately dissipate and not be there at all? Or is it learning to accept that part of you that it's a wound you'll always have?
I think that's a really good question. And I don't have a definite answer on that. But what I'll say is I'm totally open to that not being present for you anymore in your nervous system. Like, because we'll hold trauma in our body, right? So I totally know it's possible to be able to dissolve. And like, I can't measure it. I can't be like 100% of the trauma is dissolved.
Right.
But what I can say from my experience is you shift. Like I remember, I'll give an example from my own life. I've had a pattern where I've been very kind of cautious, like kind of like my energy's like this.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the lessons for me is to trust myself, to trust like fully who I am.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was if I let go of that layer of carefulness and caution and just went for it and embodied more like kind of fire lion type of energy, my hips unlocked. Like I could feel my lower body more, which is something interesting to just be present to. Like what physiologically shifts in your system as a result of healing? Because it's like, you know, if someone's like this, you know, guys, for example, a lot of guys get taught boys don't cry. You're a pussy, you're a sissy if you cry. And, you know, then you got a bunch of guys walking around like super tight and like they're trying to hold everything together and be the strongest person ever. But in reality, you're just present with them for like a minute and you might see their face twitch and they're like, and then they break down potentially. They let themselves go there. And it, you know, I think that's another thing too. It's like to let go of the judging people so much, because you never know what people are going through. Because it's like someone like that, some people might not even be present to that, or they're so uncomfortable within themselves that they're like, yeah, how are you doing? They don't want to look at them because that would make them have to look at themselves.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, there's definitely some things that I think I've released at a high level, and like most of it's gone. And there's some things I have no idea how I will let those go. But I had a pretty big breakthrough the other day with a friend of mine who is also a coach, um, and I'm very selective about who I call actually coaches or who I have on or what I do for that reason. But he pointed out to me that I needed to forgive myself. And he's like, when are you ready to do that? And I was like, well, I'm going to do it now. Like, I may have to forgive myself another 20 times, which is fine. But I did it then. And you mentioned like the physiology change of like how your body changed. I walk out, I was crying, of course, and like figured out all my shit. And then I walk out from my office and I give my girlfriend Rachel a big hug. And she's like, you are like 10 feet tall right now. What's going on?
Wow.
It was like such an impactful moment for me that I'll probably remember for the rest of my life, because I finally let go of like all the stuff I was judging myself with. And she's like, you are so tall right now. And I felt tall too. It wasn't just like, but she didn't know what my call was about. Like I'm in my office all day on calls, doing work and doing tons of stuff. She had no idea what was going on, but she instantly recognized the change in me. And I think that I share that because I want to encourage people, like, you probably are scared to look at yourself. You probably are scared to consider talking to a coach about the big or little thing, whatever perspective you have on it right now that's bothering you. But doing it can just be game changing. And then you can, in a sense, to make a little bit of a pun out of it, you can stand up tall for the people in your life that depend on you if you're willing to work on yourself.
Yeah. And that's because in the moment that you allowed yourself to release that, you depended on you.
Yeah.
I can trust myself to cry, which makes other people more apt to trust you.
Yeah.
And what I think is also really important to note is after you experienced that and went there, your authenticity became more magnetic to love, right? Because she comes up to you and is like, oh, like you look amazing. Like, you're 10 feet tall. And it's like, a lot of people have the fear. This is where the irrationality can come sometimes, where it's like, well, I'm going to lose love, which in actuality, you're losing love from withholding your authenticity because you're withholding love from yourself when you're not authentic.
And it's hard to love people that hate themselves, even if they're not trying to do that, but nobody wants to be around that, right?
Well, I mean, maybe someone to support them, but yeah,
I get
what you're saying. Totally.
The negativity that comes off of us as individuals when we're hating something is not a productive state. It's not going to magnetize good people to you, I don't think.
Right. And maybe like a coach or a healer, but like, yeah, a sustainable relationship might not be the biggest.
Might not work as well as it could.
Right. But I think it's so important because it's like when I'm authentic, I'm actually loving myself. And if we attract what we are, if we attract into this universe who we are, who and what we're embodying in that moment. So if I'm being authentic and loving myself, I'm becoming a more open channel and receptive conduit for more love to come through me from outside sources in a sense. But if we're all literally one, then everyone that I'm experiencing in this kind of game, all the characters that show up in my experience are just a reflection of me and how I'm being with myself.
Yeah. I love this stuff. It's I've always worked on myself, I would say, even from being a kid, but I think I broke through to a completely different level this year just because I've like consciously, actively, every day, every week focus on how can I grow and improve and change and what more can I uncover.
So, and I bet this has probably been a freaking amazing year for you.
It has. It's been crazy, dude. So it's been phenomenal. But those are good examples, and I think just the simplest explanation of coaching, because I was just on a call that I guess technically I probably paid $2,100 for that call, and it was worth it. It's not quite that straightforward, but I mention that because the simple truth that came out of the call, which it was very powerful and helpful, and there was a lot other things I worked on, but the statement that was made, well, of course, I can help you with this. I can see the forest and you can't. Like, you're completely blind to your own things that are going on, and I can just point it out to you because I have outside perspective. And like I think that's a simple, really simplified way of explaining what can happen when you're willing to work on yourself and ask for other people's help and input. And that's, to me, what I think coaching is about.
Yeah, it's like you don't know what you don't know. And I think for me as a coach, what's been cool is the deeper that I've gone within myself, the deeper I can support people.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like I can't see a blind spot that's a blind spot for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what was cool about this call. I just got with this person just pointed out a blind spot, and I was like, thank you so much. Like, this was super valuable. And like, now I can move forward. And I don't think there's any, I mean, there's ways to find some of that yourself, but it's a long road and you'll never see all of it. Whereas somebody can just go, oh, comedy is the thing. Maybe I'm just making that up. That may not be the thing. Like it could be something like that.
Yeah, and that's super impactful because it's like, you know, let's say, for example, you paid $2,100 for that call, but now you're more emotionally clear and at peace. I think one, an upside could be you could make a lot more money from feeling that way. But two, like, it's just awesome to feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of what comes.
Exactly. Yeah, it was worth the experience, and money's replaceable always. Yeah. So this has been an absolute blast, and I think you're on the right track, which is good too. But what's like a good next step? Where can people find you? You know, what do you have availability wise? Like who can come work with you and improve their destiny?
I would say two things. I'd say one, anyone who feels just like I should reach out to them, like, please reach out to me. I'd love to like discuss how I could support you, if I can support you, or if not, maybe send you somewhere else where you could get awesome support.
Mm-hmm.
If you're someone right now who knows, let's say, for example, there's a specific area that you want to focus on, like transforming your relationship or getting more clarity on your purpose, or like taking that next leap. Like if there's a leap for you that's present where you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm so afraid to do this, and you want support on navigating that, that's one of my areas of genius and expertise to do that. And, you know, if you're kind of like, notice you keep self-sabotaging, or you notice you've been super unhappy for a while or sad, or like just this one thing keeps showing up and you're like, I want to like get rid of this. The funny thing is I might help you get rid of it by accepting it, which would also make you have to not want to get rid of it. Anyways, it's a whole nother story, but
put it in the right place.
Right. And yeah, I mean, if anyone wants, before Monday, I leave for Costa Rica, but I do have some time if anyone wants to do like a 30-minute breakthrough session or anything like that. Be happy to support.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I highly encourage you guys to reach out to Kyle. And this has been a blast, dude. And anything I can do to help you, that's what I'm here for.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. It was so much fun.
Awesome. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.
You've been listening to Today's Business Leaders with Gabe Arnold. Remember to subscribe on iTunes. For more information, visit todaysbusinessleaders.com.